Hey everyone, welcome to PBA 305 Week 5. We are jumping into a very fun chapter here, a very crucial part to the policy, not just making process now, but on into the implementation process of policy. And we are also moving into the evaluation aspect of policy once it's already implemented. We've discussed certain portions of that already, but we're going to get into it a little greater depth and detail in this chapter. One of the chapters that we're going to go over and as a part of this. So anyway, it's an exciting time. Just a quick reminder, next Sunday, September 29th, your paper topic is due, and there is a very detailed description of the paper assignment on the Getting Started subject page in the content of this module, one of the very beginning content modules for this course. So just FYI, might want to get started thinking about that. We've got a few topic examples in there in that overview. So feel free to model yours after one of those, or use one of those, or even find an interesting topic that you'll have fun and find interesting writing about and researching, or maybe something maybe a policy area that you're very passionate about. That always helps the writing process when you're actually interested in what you're writing about. So that's the great thing about this, is that you have the opportunity to choose. Okay, so moving into this week's subject material, a few takeaways, big picture, that I think would be real good for you to take away from it from a big picture perspective, are first of all, that the budget process, which is one of the subjects here, is boils down to that political question of who gets what again. So the policymaking process has undergone, for example, creation of the Affordable Health Care Act, and then that act needs to be funded. So if a project isn't funded, then it won't be able to be implemented. So the funding process is a very important part, because it either makes or breaks the future implementation of the policy. A lot of times you're working in an environment in which a politician has made promises regarding certain areas that he would like to, or she would like to, move into policy implementation. However, those promises oftentimes turn into compromises when they are being asked by other politicians that have made their own promises and for help on theirs. And so that's when the political process goes into action in the budget making area. You're also in an environment in which there are limited resources and an overwhelming number of programs. So basically you end up with, we're talking about a lot of money here, but we're also talking about programs that require a lot of money to implement, oftentimes either here in the United States or around the world. So it becomes very much a shell game, deciding which program is going to be funded and which one takes priority. So therein lies one of the challenges of the budget process, is to fund a large amount of programs, multiple programs with a finite source of funding. We're also seeing that amongst the political needs, like we were just talking about, politicians come in with their promises and goals, which turn into compromises, but we're also working in certain social environments that require certain policies to be put in place. A lot of times, for example, the war on terror required a lot of funding to be pulled out of the national emergency budget as opposed to the national defense budget to go toward the war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan. So we're seeing where policy funding choices are being allocated toward environmental issues that are ongoing in the world. So social issues. We're also seeing where, for example, like with the Farm Bill, we have childhood hunger is an issue in our country, and we have money that needs to be allocated to feeding hungry children. That's simply something that we can't allow to happen, having hungry children. So we want for them to be fed and therefore allocate the appropriate resources through the Farm Bill to programs that help these children to eat. So certain needs, social needs that arise, certain social things like the need to protect our country are an ongoing issue. So those social and environmental issues can prioritize funds, and oftentimes those are issues that different sides of the political spectrum agree or disagree on, but ultimately those social issues will drive, to a large degree, funding being allocated. So we also see that another important goal here is to see just how complex the process is. We're talking about, for budgeting, we're talking about trillions of dollars that are being allocated toward goals, policy goals, that are short-term as well as long-term goals. And that process in and of itself goes through three main cycles. First of all, the agencies will request money for certain programs to the executive office. So basically the office of the president. He doesn't actually review their requests until they're filtered and prioritized by his office. But he does then, once that's happened, the executive office reviews the requests, prioritizes them, presents them to the president. He signs off or does not sign off on particular funding priorities, and he then kicks it over to Congress for them to resolve amongst themselves the particular budget decisions that they are asked to make. So I like to call that the 3 R's. So it's the request, the review, and the resolution. The request comes from the agencies, the review comes from the president's office, and the resolution comes from Congress. After that, the priorities go back to the agencies for execution. A lot of times during this entire process, there are multiple challenges that arise. There's political football ongoing. There's also legitimate needs that are present that need to be addressed. There's a limited amount of information from which to work when making these very large budget decisions, with millions and millions of dollars and billions of dollars per decision, that end up going into that are based on limited information. So decision makers make the best decisions they can with the amount of information that they have. At the same time, there are the ongoing need to reduce expenses, yet create results. So therein lies the conflict. Well, we can't spend as much money. Okay, well, we need to create a lot more results. Okay, well, how do we do one while obtaining the other? Well, how do we do more with less? That's the ongoing question and an ongoing theme that you will likely experience in your career as a leader in the public sphere or private sphere, wherever you end up going. Is that how do we do more with less? How do we operate on a efficiently and effectively on a smaller budget? So anyway, overall, I think that the budget process, as we've seen, is an imperfect process, but it does work. That's the one thing about it, it works. There are multiple ways and methods that it can be done, but that are probably better than the way it is in our country, but it seems to work. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, I guess, is the philosophy. We're also going to get into the goal setting and measurement phase. Basically, once a policy is put in place, the goals for the policy are set and then they're measured. So these measurements lead to policy changes, and they also help define our outcomes. Those outcomes are then tested and evaluated, and eventually we decide whether or not it needs to be changed, and therein begins the policy evaluation cycle again. It's tough because the government's not always open to change, and they often meet resistance, but it nevertheless will change is inevitable. So a lot of times people will be rift, there will be reductions in forces, but you also have respecialization, and it works out in the end. Anyway, y'all have a great week. Do well. Let me know if you need anything. Thanks.